I'm Rebecca Garrett Pace.
I'm Mitchell Boone, and you're listening to The Day After Sunday,
A brief but nerdy conversation about yesterday's worship at White Rock United Methodist Church.
We talk about what caught our attention, stories we forgot to tell, and ways that we saw the Holy Spirit moving among us. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Mitchell. Did you get that metronome turned off?
I did.
Okay, good. I
That
heard
was
that.
the weird setting in GarageBand where it automatically plays the metronome sometimes, but also sometimes when you click it off, it still gives you a metronome beat for like
a count off.
Like a count off, but sometimes it doesn't, and it's very. I was not trained to be a to edit
GarageBand.
audio.
Yeah.
No, I'm not, nor video, but here we are.
Hashtag things you didn't learn in seminary.
Right, totally.
The list is long. As amazing as my seminary was, there are many things that I'm facing that I never learned there. So, Case in point.
Yeah, I didn't need a pandemic to remind me of that, though. Honestly,
right? That's true.
What have you been up to?
I mean, yesterday we had worship, right? We're still recording on site, which is nice. It's nice to be in the space, even though we're not in the sanctuary. I really believe in, the setting the space very literally. And so it was nice to be in the parlor and have the baptismal font like there, just kind of those pieces that we see every Sunday when we're in person that ground us into the space.
Right.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was really good worship service yesterday. I really enjoyed the remembrance of baptism, although we seem to not be able to get a normal one off the ground here at White Rock.
Yeah, that struck me. Like the last one we tried to do was in January, and it was the day that we had the gas leak, or the suspected gas leak. So, yeah, I was struck by that as well. I was like, man, we just we're having some bad luck with that, but it was great. I talked with several people yesterday afternoon, and they were really moved by it. They most of them took the time right at the beginning of the worship service to go and grab a bowl of water and then have it ready for the worship service. So really neat.
Yeah, it was really, I think it's helpful to to ground ourselves in the things that we do, even though we can't, gather in the normal ways. I think it's, we've had remembrance of baptism services and opportunities at White Rock for a very long time. It's part of who we are. I don't think, maybe for some of our newer folks, it's a bit different, but for folks who've been here for long enough, they know that this is something we like to do, and we do it, we do it often.
1 to 2 times a year. Yeah. At least once a year, which I think is, to me, the ritual is very important, that we come together, like I said, at least once a year, and just remind ourselves of those vows that we took, but also the vows, probably more importantly, that the community makes to each other.
Right.
A big part of my theology of baptism is that it's really not so much about the person, it's about the community making promises to the person. Right. So
yeah, I just think that it's important for us to carry on those things. That's what I was kind of getting at. We need to continue to do the things that make us White Rock, and I don't think we have the best produced, although our production value is pretty good on Sunday morning worship service, but I do think that online worship service, I should say, I do think that there's something that's being kind of, we're seeing fruit from our work, and that is not really because we're experts at this. I think it's because the community knows us and we know them, and there's this kind of understanding that we're going to be authentic on Sunday morning and online as we are in person, and I think that for our church, that's helpful. It's also helpful to know that we're engaged with folks that we know really well, and I think that there's just this beautiful kind of symbiotic relationship between what we're doing in the parlor and what people are experiencing at home, because it's authentic, right? It's who we are, and I think that it's as good as it can be, right? It's not perfect. we wish we were in person, but it is still really meaningful to gather together on Sunday morning.
Yeah. So if you all who are listening or watching this if you were not able to join us, you can still find
Mhm.
the Facebook Live worship on our Facebook page, and you can watch that and participate. And even if you're doing it after the fact, we do encourage you to grab a bowl of water and, go through the
Totally.
liturgy with Mitchell and me, and remember your baptism as well, because we really
Totally.
believe that the Spirit is covering us all with grace in this time, especially. So.
Right. Yeah, a couple of plugs for stuff, right? So Facebook Live videos stay up on our Facebook page, so you can find most of our content there. We'll continue to put out this podcast on our podcast channel. We're also launching a YouTube channel. We're moving all of our content from Vimeo and hosting new videos on our YouTube channel, where you can find reruns of our worship service
Oh,
and a
okay.
video of
Cool.
this podcast. So make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, hashtag us and tag us in Instagram posts. We're trying to be as active as possible, but I know that that's a lot of channels and a lot of different mediums coming out.
Yeah. And don't feel like you have to do all of them. I mean,
Nope.
some of us the last few weeks, I've been on Facebook more than I've been on there in probably 3 years.
Right.
Usually I'm
Totally.
more of an Instagram person.
Right.
But so, yeah, I mean, we all kind of shift between what works for us, and don't feel like you have to subscribe to YouTube and watch everything on Facebook. Like, do what works for you. Just try to stay up to date with everything we're doing.
Speaking of what works for you, I will say Victoria's Children's Time. I thought was really timely, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
The gratitude jar thing is something that I need to do for myself and for my
Hmm.
family. Um,
Generosity jar.
generosity jar,
Yeah.
generosity
Yeah.
jar.
Yeah.
I thought it was just really a
That
really
was
great
awesome.
exercise, and hopefully folks are taking advantage of it, because I think that it's a way to kind of keep the day in front of us and kind of ground us in, like, okay, today is today, and we can't really worry about tomorrow, but we can make an impact in today, by
Hmm.
being kind to folks that we care about.
Yeah. And it struck me too, like, I don't I think it was a while ago that I went to a church that their language around children's time was, anybody who is a kid or a kid at heart. And I really loved that language. And so I've adopted it. And so I was thinking during Victoria's Children's Time, that this doesn't just apply to families with kids. Like, what would it look like
Right.
to have a generosity jar, even if you live alone, even if you live, either by yourself or just with a
Right.
partner or a spouse? And I was just thinking, like, what a cool exercise, to put some notes in there, like put some ideas in there that say, on Tuesday, I'm going to write a note to my neighbor. On Wednesday, I'm going to call my cousin that I haven't talked to. On Thursday, I'm going to, paint my toenails. I'm going to do something that's like self-care for me, and this mixture of being generous to neighbors and family, even if we live alone, and also being generous to ourselves in this time when we might need a little bit of extra grace.
Yeah, I think this is part of the routine stuff. I keep reading more and more that, like, we shouldn't get obsessive about a routine, but we should lean into a routine.
Yeah.
Like, if we've had a routine when it's non-pandemic time, right?
Yeah.
Then we should try to maintain or create a semi-structured routine for us in the midst of this pandemic. If we've had very little routine, then we should lean into having that still, but maybe put just a tad more structure around our lives so we
Yeah.
can get off the couch and stuff. But I think this is really one of the things that, like, if we really find 30 minutes in a day to be kind and
Mhm.
to reach out to folks and to try to alleviate what they're feeling,
Mhm.
and we take care of ourselves, every once in a while we do something just for us, whatever that
Mhm.
looks like. I think that the days are going to kind of end well for us. Like, they're not going to stack up on each other as much.
Mhm.
That's my biggest worry right now, is that, like, we're in day 15, 16 of
I have no idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're in day 16, and what I'm worried about is, like, the weight of all those days just is gonna, like, it's like a way to break the cycle a little bit, like a
Mhm.
daily act of kindness and really caring for someone, even if that's ourselves, or especially if that's ourselves. I think
Mhm.
is really important, and everyone can do it. And we're going to make our jar this afternoon.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think I've talked with friends, and a lot of us, myself included, need that routine, so getting up and
Yep.
putting on jeans and, changing into day clothes, even something as simple as that is really helpful to set the space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think like there's no right way or wrong way to find routine, but I think that Victoria's children's time was great. She's really been leaning into what I call the Mr. Rogers style of like talking directly to kids and families through the screen as if she was in the room with them. It's really neat.
Right. And this is what, you know, this is ultimately not the like, we don't come to worship so we can get things to do to make our lives better, but this is why I really love worship at White Rock, is because um as we come to understand who God is and who we are in relationship to God, there are some practical things we can do to like kind of remind ourselves that we are part of a community, and that we have an identity that may be different than others in the world, that like our identity is bound up with Christ's identity, and that's given to us at our baptism and all that, right? And that there's these like small little outputs that like I hope we can pay attention to, because it really connects what we believe to what we do. And I think like right now that's important, because it's hard to know what we really believe about God's providence and power. And like I continue
Mm,
to ask, like, why, why are we experiencing a pandemic? Not so much I understand this, I don't understand the science, but I believe scientists, right? So I get why viruses spread, but the bigger question is, where, if we believe that God is with us, then where is God? And I think worship then allows us to like kind of stop asking that question so much and act, and then kind of reflect on the action. And that's what I really love about worship at White Rock, is like it gives us these little places to like act out in the world, right?
hmm
And it's whether it's learning to sing with you, or kids banging on cookie sheets, right? There's like this embodiment of what we do on Sunday morning that I think is just really powerful.
Yeah. We're going to get some more of that in the coming Sundays too. I mean,
Mm.
for Palm Sunday and for Easter, I'm working, and the staff is working to create an embodied worship service. So it's not just something that people can sit on their couch and watch, but that we're going to invite people, especially on these higher holy days of Palm Sunday and Easter, when we are used to gathering in person. I mean, this is going to be the first time in a lot of people's entire lives that they haven't been to church on Easter. But embodying like rising for the hymn, even if you're standing in your living room and you're feeling silly, like embodying that space is really effective and powerful. And we're going to I'm going to work with Victoria, and we're going to like mail out or email out a PDF of a palm branch, and invite people to print it out and color it, decorate it, make it your own, like make it this really artistic
Mhm.
expression, to then have in Palm Sunday worship. So that kind of embodied faith, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I was going to say was yesterday in y'all's discussion, I think it was Josh that said, do we really believe that God's grace is enough? And I think I think the answer can change moment to moment. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And there's not a right or a
Right.
wrong answer. If you answer yes, you're not the best Christian ever. If you answer
Right.
no, you're not the worst Christian ever. But that really did hit me, like, because something that we sing so often is about grace.
Right. Right.
Amazing grace, your grace is enough, my
Right.
chains are gone, like all these different, in all traditions of music, grace is a very prevalent theme in worship music. And it just occurred to me, as I was listening to you all chat yesterday, that sometimes, much like we say about the creeds, sometimes it's not that we say it believing it already. And same with music, it's not always that we sing it believing it already, but sometimes the music is teaching us. Sometimes when we sing, your grace is enough, we're not sure of that in our hearts, and that's
Totally.
okay. That we sing to be taught by the music. We say the creeds and the baptismal liturgies to be taught by those pieces of liturgy. So I just loved that question. I'm going to continue to reflect on it throughout this week. Like, do we believe God's grace is enough?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we answer that.
Yeah, I don't know that
You
there is
know,
an answer.
I there are days I think that we do, days that we don't. The challenge I think is to not allow how we feel about that question or how we answer that question to affect how we live.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we can live like God's grace is enough, even if we doubt it, then
Mm-hmm.
we are getting into a space, because grace is like a conduit, right? Like it is not just that we consume all the grace that we need given to us by God. Well, there's certainly an abundance there, but we're actually then supposed to extend grace to others. Like for us to be able to really understand what grace is, then that means that we also are seeing the world as like grace filled people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that so much of this grace thing is living like we believe that God's grace is enough, maybe not necessarily coming to believe that every day, but if we can live like that is true, then we can kind of maintain our relationship with God even in the midst of our doubt and our, our fear or our faith.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what we've been doing in this series, right? Is uh, doubt is not the opposite of faith,
Exactly.
right? Doubt is a part of faith. And the more we can be accepting of that in ourselves and in other people, um, then I think the more freedom we're going to find and the more grace we discover where we didn't expect it.
Yeah, and that's why I think when I said belonging is in a tangible manifestation of grace in the world, like I really do believe that. Like if we can create spaces of belonging for folks who have a difficult time finding it or
Mm-hmm.
have been burnt by the world because the places they felt like they belonged had a lot of asterisks next to their identities or the way they love or who they love or the color of their skin or whatever, right?
Or the questions they have about
Or the
scripture.
questions that they
Yeah.
just ask, they won't stop
Uh-huh.
asking, right? Like the more we can let go of that and create a real space of belonging based off of God's grace, I think that is becomes a tangible manifestation of what God is doing for us and what we are encouraged then to do for others. So regardless of how I feel about it, I know that like on my worst days, if I still can see God's grace at work by like finding an opportunity to be reminded that I belong to a community, and there are some people that I would never associate with also belong to the same community, that is like a revolutionary thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that is really what I think really the world needs the church to kind of step into this space, because we continue to run into this issue where we're really divided by our identities or by our politics or by our neighborhoods or right. I mean, we don't naturally live in very porous communities. The church can be that, and when the church can be that, um I can feel okay about my doubt and my fear, and because I can at least have something tangible to say, no, this is different, this is
Mm-hmm.
really unique, and so I hope that folks kind of get a sense of that at White Rock. I mean, that's I think what we're trusting that the Holy Spirit is creating for us, and
Mm-hmm.
in return, then we have an obligation to invite as many people to be a part of it as we can.
Yeah, and that's why that was part of the reasoning behind why I chose the offertory yesterday, the
Right.
Jennifer Knapp song on love, just because it's a very simple message. It really doesn't have a lot of lyrics for a song of that length. It just says over and over, like I hear it as God talking to us. I've been waiting, I've been loving you the whole time, and I'm going to be here whether you're facing me or turned away from me. Like
Yeah.
I've waited long, but I've never given up on love. And then you can also, in an interesting way, hear that as a person speaking back to God,
Mhm.
saying like, "I've been waiting on an answer from you, and you're not answering. But I've never given up that you're loving me." And so I just love that song so much. I encourage you all to listen to Jennifer Knapp's version, as well as the one in worship yesterday. Just let those words speak to you.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed worship, as odd as it all has been, and as I really miss seeing folks and being able to check in. Looks like the Holy Spirit's showing up in my office right now.
I was just going to say, what fell off of your bookshelf?
It's the wind is blowing in.
Oh, you have your window open?
Yeah, it's we shut down the chiller up here, so
Got it.
cracked the old window.
Yeah.
So as much as I've missed everyone, I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity. Especially in today's world. So Palm Sunday is going to be great. Easter's going to be great. Holy Week stuff's going to be really, really powerful, I think. And we're going to continue to probably kind of tweak things and hopefully get better at things. Like,
yeah,
I do think we can get better at this stuff. So
of course, sanctification.
Sanctification. And
also, P.S. Right before worship, we were talking about how you used to be an acolyte.
Yep.
And you were asking me if there was a fancy name for the candle lighter / candle snuffer. So I had to do a deep dive yesterday. I had to ask some friends who are much smarter than I am and do some research. But would you like to know the official nerdy name?
I would.
Okay. It's called an emunctorium. It is ancient Latin. It's like, well, not ancient, but it's like 16th century Latin that means candle snuffer. So it's just the Latin word for candle snuffer. So you're welcome. You're welcome, world.
Yeah. Wow. That's how do you can you spell that?
EMUNCTORIUM, I think. Yeah, look it up. You have to go to Latin dictionaries. It's not in English dictionaries anymore because it's such an old word.
Okay. So I wonder what if I try to order one on Cokesbury, what are they going to call it?
They're going to call it a candle lighter.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a deep dive then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will think of a random thing we use in worship, and maybe that can be a little fun Easter egg, no pun intended.
Okay, great.
For our gathering time.
I'll have to read up on it. I'll have to go get some of my liturgy books that I have in my office right now.
Well, I enjoyed it, Rebecca. We'll do it again next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Y'all take care. You're listening to a podcast recorded at White Rock United Methodist Church in the heart of East Dallas. For more information, you can find us at wrumc.org. And make sure you stay subscribed to this channel to stay up to date with all of our content. All right.